In this exercise, we're going to take a look at animating some HTML5 web banners with Adobe Animate. So the first thing that I need to do in order to animate a web banner is have the design for the web banner to begin with. So what I've done is I've created a banner ad in Photoshop, and this would be the medium rectangle advertisement size. So I'm at 300 by 250 pixels tall at this point. And I've just created a simple advertisement for the website that I've been working with. So you can see that I've got some clouds that I can kind of play with. I've got a boat that I can move around, some different palm trees, and then the button and kind of call to action information there. So the idea is that I'll have this boat kind of coming into play, maybe the clouds kind of animate, and I've created everything on different layers so that I can manipulate these elements kind of individually from one another. So I just want to kind of create a little motion tween with some of these. Maybe I fade in or out the button according to how I want that to look, and that will be my basic layout for my elements for my web banner. So I've created everything in different folders here. All of my different clouds are in a cloud subfolder. The boat, I've actually made a little bit of a clipping mask on this and then kind of added in some clouds from different files. So I've composited a few different elements together, and by keeping them on separate layers, I can then export these into individual files so I can manipulate them exclusive from one another within Adobe Animate. The next thing that I want to do is export all of my assets so that I can use them individually within Animate. And I will go ahead and grab this background first by just kind of turning everything off. I could probably do this by using a solid color, but I think there's just a very slight gradient in this. So I'm going to go to Files, Save for Web. This might be in a different export menu depending on which version of Photoshop you're using. So look for the Save for Web, and I will go ahead and save this accordingly. And I'm going to use a JPEG for this because it's mainly a flat image. I don't need any transparency or anything in it. And I will save this to my boats banner working demo. And then I'm going to make a assets folder. And this will just be sky background. Save. And I'll kind of do this for all of the other elements as well. So I'll save my clouds. This one, I do need to have a little bit wider landscape image of it. I'll get my palm trees first. Let me get these palm trees in here, making sure that I have a lot of them ready to be saved there. Use my keyboard shortcut. This one, because there is transparency, I'll go ahead and set this to ping 24, which will allow me to drop out that background color by enabling transparency. And then I can save this, and I'll save this as palm tree. Okay. And now for the boats and the clouds, what I'll do is I will widen the canvas a little bit so I can get more of that graphic. But first, let me get the button. Let me get this button in here, and I think I have an overstate that I don't want to be on there. Okay, button normal, sure. This I want it to be white text. Here we go. Okay, that's it. This is my learn more button over text. And as you can see, it helps to label your text accordingly and all of your different layers. I'm going to export this. This will be the ping 24 again, and I'm going to save this as button normal. Let me lowercase this just for consistency purposes. And then I'll also get button pushed or button over. Save that as well. So now I know that my boat image is fairly wide. I've got a lot of image to the right as well as the left of this. So I just need to kind of expand this canvas to make it a little bit more wide so that I have some information and graphics to kind of play with. That looks like it's probably enough, and that should be enough for my clouds as well, which are a little bit wider than the standard format of this shape that I'm using originally. So I'll go ahead and save this. And this one we do need transparency, and I will name this boat ping. Save that. And then I'll go ahead and grab my clouds and save these as clouds. So I should pretty much have everything that I need to rebuild this within Adobe Animate. In my assets folder, I've exported the boat ping, button normal, button over, clouds, palm trees, and a little bit of a sky background. So I should have everything that I need to then create my layout within Adobe Animate, which I will do next. So going over to, I'll just show you really quickly in my web browser, what I'm trying to do here is just kind of animate these different layers in, some different motion tweens and effects, a little fade in on the button there. And that's what I'm going to rebuild within Animate. So let me go over here and I'm just going to close down what I had originally. And when you're in Animate, you want to create a new HTML5 canvas. I'll go ahead and click on that, and I want this to be 300 by 250 for that medium rectangle size. So I've sized this accordingly. Let me go ahead and save this as a particular file as well. So I'm in my working demo, and I will just call this medium rectangle flash and save that. So that I'm saved. Now I need to kind of rebuild those assets or the layout of my web banner within Animate CC. So this one, I'll just rename this layer and type in background sky, and I will import to stage. I need to bring in these assets that I've just saved and import them into my stage so that I can manipulate and use them within Animate. So I will bring that into my stage and bring in the sky background, and then I can use my just little pointer tool and kind of reposition this, smack that into place there. That way I have my sky. Let's go ahead and get my, I'll make a couple more layers. Let's get, I know I'm going to have my boats. I know I'm going to have my clouds, and I will have a palm tree, and I will also have some sort of a call to action. And then I delete this. I think that should be what I need. So let's see for my boats. I will import to stage, grab my boat. So you would have as many or as few of these elements as you need for your particular layout. Saving, assets, you could create them in here. You can create different shapes or text, anything that's kind of vector based you can do within Adobe Animate, previously known as Flash. A lot of the same features apply. But I'm just adding in the elements that I've created and exported from Photoshop to my stage. This one will be my clouds, and I'll go ahead and grab this and put that in there and then kind of slide it up here towards the top. Looks pretty good. And then I know I will have a palm tree. Import to stage, palm tree. This guy goes over here somewhere, and I'll kind of start him maybe off to the left a little bit. Just left of the stage is fine. And then my call to action. This will take the button normal and then just kind of place this where I want it to be within my layout. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I've got these things in here. I'm just going to save it so that I have everything in here. And then the next thing that I need to do is create some motion tweens to animate these different elements within my layout. I'm going to start with the boats layer here, and I know that I want to start animating this maybe on frame 1. You can see our timeline up here towards the top. This shows the different frames that I'm going to work with. If I have this unselected, I can see my frames per second, which by default is 24. So each 24 frames here will be 1 second of time in my animation. So let's go to the boats layer and let's try and add a animation to that. And I'm going to actually lock some of these other layers so that it doesn't interfere with my selection of some of these elements, because there's a little bit of some overlap here. I just want to be focusing on the boats graphic here, and I'll kind of pull that over a little bit to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and click here on frame 25 in my boats layer, right click this, and then do add a insert a keyframe. This will give me another keyframe of that graphic at 25 frames. So you can see now this is the only element that I've extended to 25 frames, so nothing else is visible beyond that first frame. So I need to determine how to animate this, and I can do that by right-clicking this and create a classic tween. This is going to create a motion tween of this element on this last keyframe, I can then click and drag this over to the left. And let's say I think I want to stop right about there. And that should, in theory, create a motion tween between these keyframes that animates that file. And I've just started with that first keyframe in the original right placement of it. I've created a new keyframe, added a motion tween by right clicking and adding that motion tween, and then I've manipulated where the second frame or keyframe is. This is just a different state of that particular symbol, and it just simply creates all of those different in-between frames, or it just creates the tween of that animation. So if I push return, I can see that animation happen, and I feel like it might be maybe a little bit too fast, so I can kind of extend the length of this by clicking on this last frame, and then let's just drag it out to 40, and then that should expand a little bit more time for that animation, give me a little bit more of a smooth and kind of subtle transition of that boat there. Essentially what I would need to do next is bring in the rest of these graphics and start to animate them accordingly. So if I want to start the clouds maybe a little bit later, I'll insert a keyframe, and let's say we start it maybe at about 10 frames or so. I'll lock everything else so I can just kind of play with this layer here. And actually I need to extend my background sky because I need the sky back there, so I can just insert a frame, and then that will maintain that sky up until the end of 40 seconds, 40 frames. And here is where I said I would like to start my animation of the clouds. So let's, I'm actually going to move this. I need to move this over a little bit. I don't want them showing yet. So I want them off the stage. This one I can just basically move. It doesn't really matter where that one is. Okay, so this one here, I want to start at frame 10, and let's say we want those a little bit faster than the boat. So I'm going to go ahead and add another keyframe. Going to right click anywhere in between these two frames and then do create classic tween again, and I can select this keyframe here at the end and then just drag this in. I'll kind of place that right at the end of the animation where I think I want that to end up. And again, you can see that this has animated my clouds. So now I've got two things that are coming in. I've got my clouds that go fairly quick actually. So again, maybe I want to manipulate this and have that become, maybe I want it to be actually slower than the boats, and then I can go in here and just kind of extend by adding some frames to this. And I'm just kind of determining these animated properties as I go to kind of see what works best. You know, I had kind of a concept in my mind, but then I can go in and kind of manipulate and play with these to determine the best way to do this. And because some of my clouds are transparent, my boat is kind of interfering with that cloud. I need to actually switch these layers. I need my boat to be on top. That way my boat is always in front of the clouds. That looks better, because there's a little bit of some transparency on that. It's really only the bottom half and then the tip of that sailboat. And I can kind of scrub back and forth here to see what's going on with my animation. Let's get the palm tree. I'll have that just be like a really nice kind of long stretched out animation, and add a keyframe here to frame number 55. Create my classic tween, go to my last frame, and then kind of drag this guy in there. Let's see what that looks like. And he's, of course, on top of the boats as well as the clouds. And now I get a nice kind of subtle animation of that there as well. So if I want to check this along the way, what I can do is publish this, and I'll go ahead and do publish, and this will export and compile the files required to make this animation available via an HTML file and required JavaScript information. So I'll go ahead and do publish. This will publish at the default location wherever your files are. So this is my working demo file. I've started with this medium rectangle flash, and you can see that it's now added an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and it also created this images folder, which is a transparent ping that's created a mapped image of all of those different assets that I'm using within my stage or my file currently. So if I open this medium rectangle file, we should see that being reflected in our web browser. Perfect. So this is what I'm working on, and right now it actually is looping, which I don't want that to do. So I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments to that. Let's see, in my publish settings, I don't want it to loop, I just want it to kind of play once. So I can turn that off, and I can also include hidden layers. There are some other options here if I want to kind of play with this, but I'll just go ahead and do publish from here again, hit OK, and hopefully that just kind of stops at the end. Great. Okay, so it stops now. Perfect. I don't really want it to go too fast like that. I just want it to play once and then kind of stop, so that will be great. The next thing that I need to do is animate the call to action, and I want that to come in somewhere kind of towards the middle of the animation. So I'll go to frame 20 and then go ahead and just kind of drag this keyframe there. So I don't want it before that. I want to start at frame 20. And let's say we animate it into about keyframe 25. So I'm going to insert a keyframe there. And then I will go to my create a classic tween. This time what I want to do is change the opacity on this, so I can click on the graphic that I have selected, and on the left there are some other effects or styles that I can also transform. So I can adjust the brightness, I can tween the tint, advanced, which has a couple more properties in there for color, and then the alpha channel. And by alpha channel, you're going to be able to affect the transparency of this particular graphic. So of course 0% is fully transparent, whereas 100 is fully opaque. So for the first keyframe, I'm going to reduce that down to a 0, and then it should transition into 100% at the end of the animation. So let's see what that looks like. And it's pretty fast. Maybe I'll delay it by a couple more frames there if I can grab this and then pull it out a little bit. So I have a nice little fade in, and then I need to add a keyframe to retain that graphic at the end of that animation. So it looks good. Everything is in place now. I'm going to save this and then publish this to make sure that everything looks good. And now I have my animation happening with that call to action fading in from a white or a transparent graphic to opaque. So now that we have that in, there's just one more thing that I need to do with this button. There's just one last thing that I want to do to this button, and that is add a little bit of interactivity to it, or add some different states to the button, such as hover and down. So in order to do that, what I will do is create a symbol from this graphic, and I want to make sure that I don't manipulate this instance of the animation. So I'll go to the frame right after and create a new insert a keyframe actually. So that will pick up the same thing as I have previously to it. So I've just created another keyframe that I can then manipulate and convert this into a button symbol, which I will do next. I also want to remove this keyframe at the end. If you have that there, you can just clear that, so that basically from here on is just all of the same keyframe that I've just created, and anything before that is the animation of the alpha transition. So on this keyframe that I've just created, I will then, it should be selected. If you don't have that selected, just click on your graphic, and then I'm going to convert this to a symbol. And I'm going to call this learn more, and I want this to be a button. So I'll pull down this little type selector and make sure it's on button, maybe on graphic or something else by default, but button will give us a little bit more control over different states of the button accordingly. Go ahead and click OK. So I've converted that graphic to a button now, and you can see over here in my library palette that it's no longer just a simple graphic. It's got the little button icon next to it. And I can edit this button by double clicking to enter this symbol. Once I've done that, you can see that the timeline has changed, and now I get some different states of the button, such as up, over, down, and hit. So there's really only 4 keyframes here. And up is what the button looks like kind of by default, not being activated or clicked or anything. Over is what the button looks like when I mouse over that graphic. Down is what it looks like when I'm clicking on the button, and then hit is kind of the live area or the active area of the button that I must mouse over in order to activate that button. So for over, I will add a new blank keyframe, And I just want to import that over state from my work files. So I will insert the button over ping. And now you can see that between the up and over, there's a little bit of a differentiation there between the shading and lighting, kind of the shadow on the button. For down, I just want to carry over the over state. So I'll go ahead and insert a frame, and that will pick up the content from the previous frame. And that's all I'm going to do for right now. I'll go back to my main scene by clicking on this scene graphic here to get out of the button. You can see that I'm in this kind of sub area of the button. Just click on scene 1 and that should take you back to your original scene. So I should still have the animation in there followed by a keyframe of that button after the animation takes place. I can preview this by pressing Command Return, and that will take me to my web browser to see the animation. Then if I mouse over this, you can see that my button is now, it has a hover state to it. Also, you can see up here, anything in between this text is also animating this. So what's happening is anytime my cursor is over that graphic, this tiny bar, any of this text, but see like the negative space is kind of making it deactivate as well, which is kind of weird. So I need to change the hit state. So I might choose to only have this button be the active part and not really any of this text because it's kind of confusing. So let's go back to animate. And I'm going to go back into my button, and I just need to make something on this hit state that is going to show animate where this button needs to be activated. In order to do that, I can just use some shapes to kind of draw a shape around this, and that will tell the program where that will be. So I'll just make a new layer in here. You can have layers in buttons as well, and this way I can just create something on top of this Learn More button, and I'll just go ahead and grab my rectangle tool and then just kind of click and drag over that. So I've created a rectangular shape on top of this. Then I can grab this with my selection tool, and there's something weird about Flash and Animate where you can select either the stroke around this kind of individually or the shape itself. So if I just click and drag, I'm just getting that shape. What I'd want to do is double click that, and then that should get everything. So essentially I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to add a hit box here, and I'm going to insert a blank keyframe. And then I just want to paste in place that black circle or rectangle. This can be any shape. This can be rounded rectangle, a rounded ellipse. It can be a square. It can be anything. It can be a graphic. It doesn't really show up. It's just showing the program that this is that active area for the hitbox of this particular button. I don't really need this top layer anymore, so I can just delete that. Save, go back. Now let's re-export this and see if that changes how that button interacts on our screen. So none of this top section is activating it, and then only this bottom section where I created that rectangle is now activating the symbol graphic there. So that's one way that you can kind of add some interactivity to your web banner, maybe add some mouse over or hover states to this. So again, the final animated piece, we've animated some different layers, we've added a button symbol and added a over as well as a hit state of keyframe to that to create some interactivity. Next, we're going to work on actually linking this to a website. The last step that we need to do is add the actual link to this particular animated web banner. So what I'm going to do is add a click tag to the HTML file for this. And it used to be that you would have to create a separate area in the code for the Flash to create a click tag that would be essentially the link to the website that you're promoting. Now a lot of that is done via HTML and variables. When you go to publish your advertisement with, say, a ad serving company, they'll usually have this instruction for you, so it may be similar to this or it may be different than this. But what we're going to do is open the actual HTML that we've exported so you can see that this demo file, of course, has exported the HTML, the JavaScript, and then our images within that. So I want to open the HTML file, and I'll just open and edit that in brackets, and I've done so by opening it by dragging, or you can use, of course, Dreamweaver or any other code editing software that you may be familiar with. And what I need to do is add 2 areas of code to that HTML file. The first thing that I want to do is add a script to the heading section of the code, and this will be JavaScript that establishes a variable called click tag, and then a website URL. It will define that variable as that particular website, which we'll create it to link to our website. And then I need to add a anchor tag with a link to that particular JavaScript variable. So I will go ahead and grab the boats URL that I've created, and then I'm going to edit this URL to be my website URL. And I'm going to grab this code. You'll have to type this in. Just be sure to start a script type of JavaScript. Type your variable click tag equals and then the URL. Close your script, and that goes in the heading section. So make note of this. I'll leave it in the instructions for the assignment as well. And go back to your document here, and I can place that in the head. I'll just kind of place it down towards the bottom here, and I'll give it some space down before the closing tags of the head. And I've set my variable there, so I will save that. And then I need to add the anchor tags around the div of this particular animation. So this is my body, and then with the div, I'm just going to break some space here, and I'll just make my anchor tag to begin with, and then I can add in the details for it afterwards. Go ahead and put my close anchor down there and reference my document here. So this is going to be a JavaScript window pop-up with the window that we're opening being the variable that we've established in the header tag. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this by copying that, paste it into my anchor tag that I've just added, go ahead and do save. And now when I load this page and possibly refresh it, I should be able to link to my site with that banner that I've created. Let's go ahead and open it up. I'll give it a good refresh just for safe measure. Go ahead and click on my animated button here, and then it does open a new window loading that website that I've created. So you can see that in maybe animating some web browser, some web banners, you get some really nice interactive ways of marketing your site and content online. You can add some button overstates and hit states to it, as well as actually linking to your promoted site. So that's a very kind of introductory and basic way of using Animate to create some HTML5 web banners, all the way from exporting your content and assets to animating with motion tweens through keyframes, exporting and publishing the files, as well as creating the dynamic button and the click tag. So when you go to publish this, be sure you publish all of your files. And what we're looking for in that submission is anything in here that you've utilized to make the web banner. So you can go ahead and grab all of these, maybe you zip them or include them in that other zip file with your final website. But be sure to include both of the Flash files as well as the HTML files and any supporting images, such as the different assets and images that you've used for your web banners. And that's what we're looking for to be included in this week. If you should have any questions about the process, don't feel free to let me know. There's also, don't hesitate to let me know. There's also some really great tutorials on anywhere online, YouTube, Lynda, you name it. If you get stuck, you can certainly find the answer and solution out there. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Enjoy.